Welcome to Thursday Thought Leaders with Harbinder Narula on BW Healthcare World. My guest on today's show is Sandeep Gudibanda, a serial entrepreneur who has co-founded and now leads HealthPlix, a platform for doctors. He spent a considerable time in social entrepreneurship focused on palliative care for cancer patients. On a personal front, he's someone who's a health enthusiast and has participated in many triathlons and marathons. Let's speak to Sandeep and understand the space of health tech and what is HealthPlix doing to create an impact in a doctor-first platform. Sandeep, welcome to BW Healthcare World. Thank you so much for taking our time to speak with us. My first question to you, Sandeep, is that, how do you think is tech changing the face of the healthcare industry? Because there are various activities that we are seeing in the healthcare industry where tech is playing a role, right from surgeries to clinic management to bringing efficiency in, hospitals. How are technologies like AI and blockchain bringing efficiency to the medical practitioners? How are we creating access to these solutions?
Yeah, no, sure. So, firstly, if we look at overall healthcare and then sort of say preventive, then curative, right? So there's a whole lot of impact that technology can make. But if you're looking at curative space, and then divide into, let's say, surgery and medicine, you would see that surgical side of healthcare, health tech has, skyrocketed, right? So there's a whole lot of technology that can happen, surgeries that can happen remotely, a whole lot of things are happening there, right? But unfortunately, on the medical side of things, it's not, the adoption of technology has not been that great as we would like it to be. I see that as an opportunity as well as the challenge. And of course, on a preventive side as well, there's a lot that technology can do basis prevention of various diseases, or especially of the secondary diseases or tertiary diseases. There's a whole lot that it can do. But let me come back and then say, pick medical side of it and curative side of it, right? So I'll pick that and then say what can happen, what should happen, what's not happening. So if I think of, let's say, India as a segment, we talk about doctor to patient ratio being less. But being in healthcare, and talking to various doctors, I see that it's not the overall ratio that is, a problem for us. I think bias towards metros, especially at the specialist level, super specialist, is a problem, right? Otherwise, I could make sort of a controversial statement saying that we have enough doctors. It's just we need to distribute them well, right? So that's the problem that we have. Now, just starting at that level, right? What technology can do is, even if a specialist is sitting in a metro and a generalist is sitting in a tier 2 or a tier 3, tier 4 town who has access to patient. So the technology can solve this access through a two-step process instead of a single step, right? So that's something that, was a big problem which could not have solved elsewhere. People had to travel from smaller towns to bigger towns, right? This is erstwhile healthcare. Just that access itself can be solved using technology, right? So there's no AI, nothing that I'm talking about here, right? It's just basic vanilla stuff. Now, when that is happening, that patient's treatment records, he could have gone to 3 to 4 different doctors. If that is made available to a doctor, right, who's seeing the patient for the first time, especially sitting in a metro, then his treatment methodology can be elevated, right? Instead of starting from scratch from zero, he's starting at 50%. He knows how the patient responds, etc. Now, I'm not just talking about a patient-doctor access. I'm talking about medical information, the longitudinal journey of the patient being available as well, right? So this is, again, just the data being available. Still no AI, but technology is solving a problem. On top of it, if you think of a particular patient has been treated in a particular disease with a particular treatment methodology, how did the patient respond? Now you're going deep into data availability access, and then nudge the doctor saying that, look, this has been treated in the past, patient does not respond well. There's no point in you picking the same treatment methodology. For example, diabetes on HealthPlix platform can be treated in about, is being treated in about 600 different ways, right? There are so many different ways. And typically it's impossible for doctors to say for this patient, this will work well. So it's a trial and error that they choose. If it works well, based on some gut feel that they have, it works. Otherwise, he needs to change. Now, over a period of time, what doctor may have tried in the past may not work now, right? So, I mean, it hasn't worked and he has changed a couple of times. He may think of choosing the same thing again. So just that small nudge can help him avoid another iteration of something that doesn't work, right? So now we are trying to mix data, a little bit of AI, very basic, but help outcomes. Now you could think of collective intelligence coming in right now for this kind of patient. This is how collectively across India, all, let's say, super specialists are treating. Now you built a knowledge base and help an individual doctor saying that, you know what, in this region now, this disease, upper respiratory disease is picking up. For this kind of diseases, what doctors are doing. So now you add another layer of technology and then say, I can treat very well, not just by my own intelligence, but collective intelligence. So like this, I think Harbinder, just technology, I think can go leaps and bounds in terms of solving for access, solving for the right treatment, solving for the data, and minimizing the, diagnosis, delay in diagnosis, right? Not just helping them to find the right diagnosis, but even delaying. I think technology can go a long way, and you would have read multiple times that initial period, right, when somebody picks up a disease, what gets treated in the early days goes a long way in saying that how the disease progresses, right? I think slightly longish answer to your question. Our belief is technology should help doctors in all of these layers, and I'm so looking forward to all of this happen.
Sandeep, I always have been talking of that, there are these three pillars of healthcare, which is the access, the quality, and the affordability. So anything anyone is doing in the field of healthcare, and especially tech, is impacting any of these three or all the three. So I'm so glad that technology is not just restricted only to surgery, but it is going towards better treatment options and helping the doctor pick up what is the best possible for the patient. Now, you in your conversation, you did mention that while we have this more accessible in the urban areas, right? How do you think the integrated database systems that is helping the patient outcomes, I believe, will be perceived in its utilization and adoption in rural areas and remote areas, that will help them give better healthcare support to the patients who otherwise do not have the best in class treatment, So how is this going to, how do you think this will be adopted in these areas?
Yeah, I think, the skew of specialists being available in metros is a problem well understood right now. It is not one-time access to a doctor. It is for many diseases, it is a multiple continuous journey access, and multiple times the health of the patient could be recorded through IoT, makes it available to get the data points on a daily basis. If, if it's not possible, at least a weekly basis, etc., wherever the patient goes. So it should be needed. It is needed for doctors to treat, right? So now only if all that information is coming back to doctor in one place, right? But my take on integrated databases, Harbinder, is not simple, right? I mean, I've seen multiple devices having ability of IoT, where data is not only being generated at the point of patient's house, patient's bed, wearable, etc. That information goes back to, at best, to that device's application, right? Let's say if I have a glucometer, which is IoT, at best today, that information goes to its own app provider, right? Means one firm's data. Now, integration needs to happen from that device to, a platform that doctor is using so that he can make sense of various data points that are coming in. At least he will get a 360 degree of what is happening for the patient, right? And now, if is that enough? If I ask, let's say there are 10 devices, all 10 apps in silos, then didn't make any sense for the treating doctor, right? But even if all of that information comes onto just EMR, it's big leap, but is it enough? Unless a doctor has a way to automated way of nudging the patient, saying that, look, everything is great, thumbs up, goes a long way in patient motivation. No, everything is not great, something is wrong, you got to do this again, right? So that's when, whether it is, and all of this happening in a real time, right? Opportunity of acting fast when something is wrong through multiple data points and through your own service provider, care provider, at that junction will go a long way in preventing many things going wrong, right? So in my sense, I think integrated databases is fantastic, but we still need to go, I mean, that ecosystem we're still building, it'll happen, but it still needs to go to say that, this information is great, but let's connect the last mile and then make sure that a few seconds of important seconds we act then, right? So that's where I think the integrated databases will be super useful.
And Sandeep, since we're talking of integrated databases, one is the platform. So like you said, that the information being collected is on that particular platform and it is not being shared with another, or forget about the platform, even the devices. But the problem is beyond that. I remember almost like a decade ago, I was at a conference and I was talking about that, every hospital has traditionally been capturing information. Every doctor has been capturing this information, but the patient is not always going to the same doctor or the same healthcare provider all the time.
Yeah.
So the information that is being collected has to be stored in a place where wherever the patient goes, that information is available. Yeah. Now, one of the things that is happening as an outcome of ABDM and all the companies that have integrated with ABDM is that the data or the power of sharing the data is with the patient. But most of the time, the patient is not in a position to share the data, right? Yeah. And most of the doctors are using, they may be using a platform A and you have a doctor who's using platform B and those platforms don't talk to each other.
Right.
How can we create this seamless? Do you think it is a reality and could it be really soon that all the platforms are integrated and the data sharing could be, if you look at the real problem, if somebody meets with an accident today, and he's taken to the hospital, right? That emergency treatment, the doctor has no information about the patient at all. Yeah. So where do you think having information available at any point in time with any treating doctor about that person could become a reality, and how will it happen?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on record and then say, I think everything that you explained probably will be happening in India in maybe 3 years or 4 years time frame for sure, right? So I think the architecture or the vision with which ABDM is being built is essentially to solve for that. The platform is great. I think it has a little bit of sort of seeding issues going on right now to get hospitals, doctors to adopt this. What's in it for me, I think, is a question that is, becoming an obstacle. And I think government is in the right direction in terms of solving all of these things, right? There are incentives being rolled out. There are sticks that will come in for sure. So with all of that, it will get implemented. Like I said, I think I can go on record and then say integrated health records of entire India as a population is out there, right? It's in near distant future. It's not too far. The question is only when. I think 3 to 4 years, right? So now, when we started HealthPlix, we started building our own health stack, right? Like for all doctors who are on HealthPlix platform, the patient walks into one doctor, there is a record, and he goes to another doctor who's also on HealthPlix. with the consent of a patient, he could share his records, right? So the doctor need not start from zero. He takes on from there. And it is very important because moment we looked at chronic, it is not a patient shopping from a diabetologist to another patient, other diabetologist. It is more often than not, diabetologist saying that you now need a neurologist. Now you need a cardiologist, right? So, and it is very important in such kind of referrals for doctors to know what has happened. Why is the patient coming to me now? Like if I take a nephrologist case, there's nothing in human body that doesn't get affected, right, because of that disease. So in such cases, what has happened for patient is supremely important. We said with the patient consent, his own information can be shared to another doctor. That was our own health stack, right? So all doctors, all institutions needed to be on us. But with ABDM, it's like it'll become ubiquitous. It doesn't matter who the system is, as long as they're exchanging information, it should be available. I think it is very useful. It's being done in a sort of pretty good way in terms of vision. But if I look at tactically what people are doing today, is any record is being treated as a health record, right? That's like if there is a handwritten prescription that is being written and then somebody takes a photo of it and then uploads to ABDM, it's considered as a health record, right? I mean, I think that while it makes it easy, right, to create a longitudinal journey of anybody, in a case like an emergency, you get some 20 scanned images. God knows whether it is in the right, lighting, all that, right? So I think the very purpose will be defeated if you allow such things to happen. I think it should be digital. Even if it's a tough route, we should take that route so that in a tough time, fraction of a minute or second that people need to get that information, that has to be digital, right? I think if that is taken care of, I think 3 years, 4 years, you will see entire India being, healthcare information being freely available for others at the consent of a patient. I see that happening. Security seems like is on par with what it should be, the way ABDM is being built out. As long as some of these seeding issues, teething issues are solved for, I think we're in safe hands.
So, Sandeep, let me come to what HealthPlix does. If I understand correctly, it is helping the doctor write his prescription. Right. So you have all the information that is available, keeping in mind whatever symptoms the doctor is entering, etc. Now, what I really want to come to know is, because we have a lot of technologies coming in to do, like I was talking, surgeries, etc. But what builds the efficiency in managing the practice? Because the doctor is spending a lot of time with the patient and trying to understand. Do you think HealthPlix could reduce the pressure of taking the right decision, and also in return reduce the burnout in any ways? Have you observed any signs of this during your interaction with these doctors?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's the essence of what HealthPlix does, Harbinder, right? So we are a doctor-first firm. Everything that we do, we look at how do we make doctors' life easier, right? Whether it is a clinical burnout that is happening or a physical burnout that is happening, because they see so many patients on a daily basis, and many times it's repetitive, right? It's not new case; it's the same kind of case that is coming in. So it is that much more important for doctors to be a lot more fresh when they're treating the patient, right? Because one odd case can be different. So everything that we do, although it is, we call ourselves as a EMR tool, at heart, we are a lot more clinical, while we do a clinical management aspects as well. But we do, a large part of what we do is for the doctor. When I say for the doctor, ability to write a prescription instead of pen and paper, when he moves to HealthPlix, it needs to be fast, right? So how can we make him faster, right? If it's taking a 30-second on pen and paper and then it takes 2 minutes on a software, is not going to shift. So we have to be faster than pen and paper, much faster than pen and paper, right? Which is what we have done. So if it takes 500 characters prescription, rich prescription, doctor only use this with 6 clicks, 3-4 characters, he'll be done. right? So when that happens, he's seeing productivity. Wherever templatization can happen, software is constantly learning from him, and then automatically templates are being created for him. So that if he sees, I was saying, if he sees a URTI patient who has come in, one, in this geography, there is upper respiratory tract infection that is going on, just that information alone will allow the doctor to tap in and then say, is this that or not? Right. So there's, in terms of his burden, right, it's getting solved there. And if it is that, automatically there should be a URTI treatment plan that is ready. So the one click, the plan is ready, right? So diagnosis got faster, writing the prescription got faster. And then when should the patient come back, right? Some of these logistics today, he needs to explain to a friend desk or somebody saying that now the patient needs to come back. He would write it, but who would remind a patient? All of that gets automated on HealthPlix. 2 days before a patient needs to come back to a doctor or share a prescription, alert goes, right? Some of these, let's say patient is, pediatric patient, vaccination reminders need to go, or some of these things, like let's say doctor has put on a particular drug, now it could have a side effects. You constantly need to check, is the patient experiencing that or not? Who would do it? Now it's outside the four walls of the clinic. All of that on HealthPlix we automate it, right? So that there is very little logistics burden on a doctor, very little clinical burden on a doctor, right? And finally, we do a clinical decision support, which is something that we love. Based on overall collective intelligence and individual learning, we now could say this patient is high risk for liver disease, 80% probability of having a liver disease. Do you want to do a liver function test? Right. So doctor can just do one click, the test will happen. So we have seen 20% improvement in terms of diagnosis rates, pre and post. So it is right now we are tapping into doctor's wisdom and saying, we think something is wrong. What do you think? Right. So doctor can think again. Of course, many a times what we are saying could be wrong, but he's applying his knowledge and then acting upon it. Right. So that's a big deal. If I take a example of drug to drug interactions, right? Today we do about 1.3 lakh consultations on a daily basis. It's huge. 9% of these consultations have medicines which interact with each other, right? Now doctors may know and is still prescribing because it's needed for the patient, or may not know, right? So 48% of times when we alert, doctors change, which means those many times we have prevented the medical errors. So all of these things are like, sort of exhaustion, clinical burden, cognitive burden, physical burden, all of that is what HealthPlix is trying. Look, we are truly an assistant to a doctor. We will be there with you to make sure that none of these things are bothering you, right? So that's our take of why we are a doctor first firm.
I think, Sandeep, it's not just an assistant. I think it's a partner for the doctor because, most of the time the doctor is a lone soldier in the clinic.
Right.
Even if they're working in a hospital during the OPD, they're the only one sitting there.
Right. Yeah.
And so many times there could be possible treatment options which may not occur to him at that point in time, or they may not have thought of the other things. So I think it's a brilliant, support to the doctor, and of course does ensure that you're not making errors or negligence where you may not have thought of this. And even if you're mentioning that this could have side effects, he'll be reminded to let the patient know.
Right. Yeah.
My only worry is that if you're reducing the number of the time that he takes with the patient, that may not be taken really well with the patient, because the biggest challenge is that doctor does not spend too much of time with them.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, the contrary, what happens is ability for doctor to spend on menial tasks or time that he spends on the menial tasks, we reduce, so that his conversation with the patient is a lot higher, right? For example, on HealthPlix platform, one of the classic things that I've seen doctors use is, Sandeep, last time when you come in, you had breathlessness as a complaint. How are you now? Right. So we still live in a world where I don't expect doctors to know my name. I don't forget about doctors to know about my complaint, right? It's possible because technology can give you that longitudinal journey. So while I stressed upon a productivity at a doctor level, one of the things that we do really well is to enhance the emotional connect between a doctor and a patient, because once that connect happens, there is the trust that comes up. Compliance on the medicines, what patients take, all that will go up. It's very important for doctor. Of course, it's important for the patient.
Absolutely. Now, Sandeep, since we are talking of the patient and the doctor connect, today there are a lot of these remote monitoring tools that are there, IoT, etc. Is HealthPlix already connected with, or is integrating with certain IoTs or remote monitoring devices, or do you have plan to do so that once the doctor has prescribed something, I mean, I'm specifically taking the case of diabetes, where IoT is playing a very important role today, so that the feedback from the system is already coming in and fed in, so that when the patient comes in again, that data is already there with the doctor. Is that happening right now, or is it on the cards?
We have built out APIs. We have given it out to folks, saying that we are open, information can easily flow in. It's available to the doctor. We can reverse automate to the patient. All of those APIs are built in. Now the challenge in India with health tech is monetization, right? So everybody who's doing this is obviously sort of incurring a lot of cost of one. Devices are cheap, right? So it's but margins are very little in that. A lot of startups that get created here will be with the thought process that I sell my device and on top of it I add my service, right? That's where margins are, is how people think. And because of which, when we say we will just integrate and information flows to us, the service at HealthPlix is by the doctor, right? So which means for the partner firms, that ability to add that service as a component on their product becomes a challenge, right? So now if that is not there, then at least, because I'm doing all the heavy lifting of getting that patient's data, storing, passing on to you, I need to get paid, right? Is how the I think some of the challenges that we see in Indian health tech industry. Of course, you don't see anywhere else, but specifically in India, you would see it because of monetization angles. So today, as we speak, we are integrating with the glucometer. As we speak, we are integrating with the wearable. Some of these costs we're having to bear, at least in the short term, to say that let's create that momentum of doing things, more sales. But we don't want to create additional parallel service layer that doctor is already giving, right? So given that we're a doctor first firm, that's how we think. But it's very, very useful to integrate. It's important that we integrate with a lot of IoT devices for sure.
And Sandeep, how big is the market? I mean, how many doctors are there in the country? And what is the access of internet? What is the addressable market in India for something like HealthPlix?
See, I mean, they about a lot of reports would say that there are close to 1.2 million doctors. But I mean, I see operating universe, different firms, different sectors. If you look at, right, if you go on and ask diagnostic service providers, where is the business coming from? Who are the doctors who are treating? You go to pharmaceutical firms, it gives you an indication of what's a real number, right? I think that real number has a term, operating universe, which is about 3.2 lakh doctors. So now that's an addressable market for me. About 15% of this contributes or impacts or influences 50% of Indian healthcare. So which means if we are able to get to about 40,000-50,000 doctors, then we will be able to influence 50-60% of the market, right? Which is what we look at as a short-term goal for us, right? So for us to go to. Of course, $100 billion market overall Indian healthcare, like any other industries getting disrupted digitally, I think 10% should happen. So health tech should have at least $10 billion market is what we think.
And Sandeep, this data that HealthPlix stores, is it on the cloud?
It is on the cloud. One of the things that you mentioned in your previous statement is internet, right? So we have seen that as a challenge, right? So we are always online tool, but just this quarter we launched a hybrid. Even if there is no internet for a doctor in that clinic, sometimes that the clinic Clinic may have internet, but doctor's chamber may not have, right? So we run into such issues. Clinic will have internet, but if it goes off for 3 days, right? Or it's intermittent, right? So hence we have launched hybrid. So where it actually sits in the doctor's system for a while, whenever internet becomes available, it syncs back. For the de-identified data to come to our cloud. Also, some of the algorithms that I spoke about earlier, helping doctors treat the patient right, gets ingested into the system as well. So that's something that we've built newly, but yes, it's all on the cloud today, Harbinder.
And apart from the internet being a challenge for the doctors, how are you tackling the security of the data? Because this has a lot of personal data which could be compromised. How are you tackling this issue of ensuring that the data is safe?
Yeah, but we've always recognized data, being safe for utmost important. Whenever we are building any feature, we've always looked at it through that lens. Not just because health data is sensitive. Of course, it is important, but not just because of that. If you look at doctors also, doctors don't want their patients' information to be available to another doctor. Like there's other, business reasons that also come in, right? So we always look at from these two perspectives, and then hence everything that we do at HealthPlix is we take two steps, one above the other, to make sure that the patient data is extremely safe. So one, the PII gets stored in an encrypted manner separately, and then there is a clinical information that gets stored separately, right? So now it's not at one place for anybody to access these two things, right? So that's one step. Two, we do a 256 sort of a key encryption standard, which is very high in terms of what it should be. We have never compromised on that, whether it is on the wire, at rest. Data security needs to be important. We look at what are some of the best banking systems do, right? So we borrow all that and then do make sure that the information is highly secure on HealthPlix platform. On top of it, we create doctor-specific circles, right? I mean, I say this to all the doctors. It's almost like we draw a Lakshmana Rekha around his own patient base, so that it's not just patient information being secure, but doctor-patient in relationship to that information is also needs to be ultra secure. So I always look at security in the two-step process for us.
Sandeep, let me move away from just HealthPlix and let me come to you.
Okay.
You've been a serial entrepreneur. I mean, you've done 5 startups, of which 2 are healthcare related.
Right. Yeah.
How is doing startup in healthcare different from any other field?
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, it's if doing healthcare, I think is I would say for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? I mean, we are driven by the impact that we create largely, right? So that way, healthcare is a natural choice. Like, if you're doing something in healthcare, you anyway super excited about the impact, and it's really seen, right? So hence, I think starting off a health tech firm and then deriving satisfaction out of it, I think for an entrepreneur, I would say it's a awesome thing to do. But the challenging thing to do is health tech in India. Monetization is not straightforward, right? And it's very easy to start off. A lot of people jump in and then say, I'll build this for doctor. They will get 100 doctors. They will get 500 doctors, right? I mean, it plateaus. So, and who pays? How do they pay? Why do they pay? What are the ethics involved? All of those things wouldn't have been, people usually don't think through. And of course, for me, I've had the advantage of being in healthcare for a long time, to understand what are the dynamics here, willingness to pay for different players, right? So I think getting that monetization revenue model right is extremely important. If somebody is thinking doctors will pay, patients will pay, it's not going to happen, right? It's not. Reality is average consultation fee, even on a sort of top of the funnel doctor base that HealthPlix has, is 400 rupees, right? I mean, So at that level, you cannot be thinking doctor will be paying anything meaningful for you to build out a system. So it has to be a fairly horizontal system, right? So that is a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs. I think starting out in health tech, but health services is very different ballgame altogether, right? I think it's huge opportunity putting patients first. Like for example, at NephroPlus, we did that. I think moment you do that, chances of you succeeding is naturally a lot higher, because that's not how healthcare systems are built, right? So I think that's an advantage for anybody who's getting into healthcare, into the services side, I would say.
What are these specific big opportunities in healthcare? I know you mentioned services, but are there any specific areas that you feel are huge opportunities for healthcare founders to look at specific to India for the next 3 to 5 years?
See, I think some of the macros are going really well for India, right? I think the willingness to pay for different, especially for where people know that the quality is going to be higher. I think people, when they get rich, they spend on house, they spend on lifestyle, and then they start spending on health, right? I think we keep brainstorming on this. I think the first two, for at least large part of population, the first two are met, right? So now, at least in the middle and the higher income that I'm saying, so now people will start spending on healthcare quality, is the sense that we have. So hence, as long as you're building anything which sort of drives quality of health for a patient, I think there'll be a good opportunity for sure. Health tech is huge opportunity. I think India has a unique opportunity to leapfrog from where we are to globally, right? I mean, I keep saying that I think India could be much ahead, just the way fintech happened, where we leapfrogged ahead of various countries. I think that will happen in healthcare too. So I think it's a huge opportunity on health tech. Anybody who's doing a single specialty, I would love it, because their extreme focus on that particular disease will be very high. Naturally, quality of it will be very high. Customer centricity will be very high for that piece. So I still bet my money on single specialties and health tech.
Sandeep, what's next big thing coming out of HealthPlix? I mean, I've been asking you about the opportunities and you know them, and so what is HealthPlix going to be doing? Whether it's going to be more number of doctors, which is an obvious thing, you'll be expanding to have adoption of HealthPlix. But is there something really big that you have observed after launching HealthPlix, and that could be something that will come as an integrated service or a product from HealthPlix?
Yeah, I mean, when we launched, of course, we launched thinking that we will drive better health outcomes, right? Not just at one specialty. For multiple diseases across the population, we need to drive health outcomes, right? While the vision sounded great, we had absolutely no clue on how we will do it, right? That was just a vision. So I didn't think, when we started off, that we will be sitting where we are sitting in terms of the kind of quality of data that we are able to generate through doctors. Entire de-identified data is generated through doctors, right? So automatically, we don't have to do anything. Just the fact that doctors are treating patients on HealthPlix platform, this is getting generated. So it's almost like crowdsourced a model of generation of data in a de-identified manner, right? So that means your cost for it is sort of course, it's given away for free. You could argue that way, but the cost of this today, about 2.5% of entire India is treated on HealthPlix, right? So it's become big, right? So and on a daily basis, 1.5 lakh, 1.3 lakh consultations are happening. All that comes in automatically, right? And we're able to extract that into multiple layers to see how can I add value. So the vision with which we started, the clinical decision support, I think now, because of the quality of data and the ease of generating that data, because of those two reasons, our ability to experiment on saying some of these nudges, when information is available, not available, can we nudge the doctor saying this is there based on collective intelligence, I think is going up. And we are, some of the we now have allocated 15% of our fundraise for some of these experiments. I think one of the things that I'm super excited about is clinical decision support as an API, right? So all that we are generating need not be just benefiting the doctors who are using HealthPlix. It could be benefiting other doctors who could be using some other solution, right? An HIS. As an API, can I give out clinical decision support to larger healthcare, right? Can I give that out to ABDM, right? Anybody uses any ABDM can get benefited through what we're generating. Seems like next big thing that will excite us. We are now thinking, can insurance firms use our APIs and then say for all their uh, clientele, here are the risk items, right? So intervene early, right? So make sure that they remain healthy. I think the ability of the consequences, the positive consequences of this seems like preventive, curative, multiple things can be affected. I mean, it just excites me, and which is why 15% of the fund being put in for experimentation is not something that will happen in startups. We are taking that leap of faith and then doing it now.
There are two things that I can see very clearly. One is that you spoke about sharing of knowledge, because a particular case study of a particular doctor could become a knowledge source for every other doctor to follow what treatment options. It could be an added treatment option.
Correct.
Second is, once you have the data, and with the quantum of data, like you just mentioned, that you could be serving about 2.5% of the country
Right.
through HealthPlix, the data that is getting captured, and a layer of AI on that could be super useful as a feedback to the pharma companies as well. So that's I mean, with the data, I think there is loads that can be done. So I'm so glad that a startup like yours is spending about 15% on experimenting, because sometimes there's a lot that can come out where you have not planned, but just you stumble upon something new.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Sandeep, it has been lovely speaking with you. I mean, my conversation with you could go on because it's super exciting stuff that we are talking of. But thank you so much for taking our time, and it's lovely to know what HealthPlix is doing and the impact it is creating and is expected to create in the future as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Abhida. And then I must say that I think the doctors, our customers love us. They know, they trust us to an extent that, anything that with HealthPlix, we first think of doctors, right? I think that is super key. It's helped us, and I think it'll help us moving forward as well. And the fact that we do everything on de-identified is an education that we had to do for doctors. And thankfully, doctors understand, doctors help us improve as well, right? So there's a lot of feedback that comes our way as well. I love the conversation. I think likewise, I could go on, talking to you, learning more from you on what other firms are doing, etc., etc. But we'll do that offline. Thank you.
Absolutely.